Welcome to Miles from Her View, the podcast where we dive deep into the unfiltered reality of fitness, strength training, and nutrition within womanhood and motherhood. I am your host, Kat, founder of KatFit Strength. I'm a career strength and conditioning coach, entrepreneur, lifelong athlete, and a mom of 2 active boys. In each episode, we explore the unique challenges and triumphs faced by women navigating the complexities of life. From juggling family and career to prioritizing self-care, we dissect the systems and the habits that shape our health and wellness. Join us for real stories, authentic advice, and genuine conversations as we empower each other to embrace our journeys and find strength in vulnerability. Welcome back to Miles from Review. I'm super excited to have Nicole McNillis here. She is a licensed mental health therapist and a maternal mental health counseling specialist. She is the founder of an award-winning counseling private practice in the suburbs of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where she also resides with her family. Nicole has been featured as a mental health expert in print publications, online media, books, and podcasts. Serving as a subject matter expert and conference presenter for Postpartum Support International, Nicole is honored to serve the maternal mental health community. Passionate about supporting individuals through life transitions, both big and small, Nicole helps her clients move through the overwhelm and the exhaustion of juggling it all the time. I'm super excited to have you on and to chat with you. I know we've had many conversations over, I think, the past couple of years. So welcome.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited. This is a really great opportunity, and I think we're going to have a great conversation.
Yes. So I always like to ask my guests, how did you get into the field that you're in? So yeah, share with us, how did you land here?
Yeah, so after undergrad, I actually started out in sales, and I did that for about 6 years, and I was doing just fine, but I didn't love it. I didn't feel like I was contributing to the world in any way, any good. And that didn't sit well with me. And I was really struggling with what I was doing for my career. And so when I really sat down and thought about it, I found a really wonderful therapist, and we really explored what I wanted to do with my career, and I'd gotten to a point where I was so bogged down that I couldn't even dream about what I wanted to do next. And I really kind of needed to get unstuck. And I was able to do that in therapy. And that was over 20 years ago. I'm still so thankful for that therapeutic experience. And so I decided that I wanted to be a school counselor and maybe eventually do some outpatient work. So I applied to graduate school, and the minute that I got in, I sent my 2 weeks notice into the sales job that I was in at the time. And I have never looked back. So I started out as a school counselor. And then so I have 2 kids. Once I had my first, I started to do some outpatient work because the schedule is more flexible, and I was really interested in outpatient work. That was kind of always the end goal for me. And then once I had my second child, I decided that I was ready for private practice, and I started to look into that and start putting that together. And that was also when I decided that I was interested in maternal mental health because I was a mom. I was now a mom of 2. I really thought about which clients I served best, and it was really the moms that I was working with. And so I got my training and certification in maternal mental health. And once again, never looked back. So my private practice is 5 years old now. I cannot believe it. I now work with Postpartum Support International quite a bit. They're the organization where I get my certification from. I was honored to be able to present at their international conference this summer. I'm a guest writer for them on some of their blogs. So this has just led me into some really interesting and really cool places, and just the ability to talk about maternal mental health more and more freely and without stigma has really been such a gift. So that's my story. That's what brings me here.
Yeah, and I love it. And I think it's something like what you said there is without the stigma. And I think that is, for the most part, going away. And this concept of, you know, some of it gets glossed over as the mom guilt, the baby blues, like, oh, this is, it may be, I won't say normal, but it's, or common, it's not normal. And I know for myself, when I went through with my second one having postpartum PTSD, I always say, like, I never thought I was that bad. And looking back, I'm like, oh my goodness, like I was like, and it is great to bring it to the forefront, to have these conversations that even if your pregnancy to delivery, or even if your motherhood isn't traumatic or like filled with that trauma, it doesn't mean you don't deserve support in that capacity. I think we all need it. And I think it's hard sometimes to be like, well, nothing bad happened. Well, nothing bad has to happen to have support and have that give back to you, because it is a huge transition. No matter if it's your first time, second time, third time, or what, however many times, it's a huge transition. So, I mean, motherhood, it's not for the faint of heart.
No, it's not for the faint of heart. And it's a monumental shift in
Yeah.
so many ways, right? Because it impacts every part of your life. So clearly, emotionally, psychologically, physically, if you are giving birth, right? Logistically, right? It changes your entire schedule. And so
Yeah.
it impacts every single part of your life, identity wise. And so, yes, it is a monumental shift. And my oldest is 12. He's going to be 12 at the end of this month, which is just unbelievable to me. And I'm so thankful in the 12 years since I've been a mom, there has been such a shift in terms of stigma, and also in terms of how many providers are knowledgeable and certified. And it is so much easier to find a qualified provider who actually knows what they're doing in the field of maternal mental health. Where just 12 years ago, we live in a major metropolitan area, right? We're in the suburbs of Philadelphia. And it was really, really hard to find a provider 12 years ago who specialized in maternal mental health. Now there are so many wonderful providers who specialize and who are certified. And it is such a good thing that the field has moved in that direction. And I'm so, so thankful.
Yeah, oh, 100%. I remember my youngest is 10, and he's the one that I postpartum PTSD with. And I remember looking, and there was one provider, and at the time I was living outside of Boston, again, another major metropolitan
Right.
area, one provider. And aside from that, and I remember asking my OB, who was phenomenal, and she was just like, I don't know, maybe you could read a book. And I'm like, because she's like, I generally don't have any resources for you. And she did go out of her way, because she had I don't know if she never had someone ask, or like I can't answer for her, but she did help me find someone, because she's like, well, this book came out, actually, it was the woman, and I can't remember the book she wrote, but it was the one provider in the Boston area. And thankfully, I lived 4 miles from her office. And I, can't imagine. I always reflect back to that, and to your point that there are so many providers around. So when I hear something from my clients that I'm like, hey, kind of, puts that, maybe not red flag, that like, ooh, I need to tune into this. And maybe if they're okay with it, have a conversation like, do you have someone to speak to? Or if clients, based on their history, because I do hear a lot, if there has been loss, or if there has been a previous pregnancy where there may have been trouble time, or most recently, within the last 4 years, clients who have had pregnancies during 2020 with all of that, and they're coming in as either second or third, I'm like, hey, going through this, have you thought about talking to someone? Because we don't know what could trigger, and it's not like we have to walk around on eggshells. The mind is a cruel, amazing thing that we don't know what could set off or how it could affect. And it's not that we're delicate. We're just extremely resilient beings that are so outward focused as a mom, that if we have that care giving back to us, I think it just generally helps all the way around. So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
but yeah, the one thing I really want to dive into is, I'm going to say, I don't say it's a topic you've uncovered, but kind of, I'm going to say, I hate this word, but I'm going to use it. That's kind of trending for you, is the maternal rage. So we're going to segue into that, because it's huge. And I know I get mad. I feel that. Yeah, I mean, if you want to, I'd love to hear your thoughts, kind of how you, I don't want to say stumbled upon it, but like just feel free to share. It's your moment.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you for sharing that it is something that maternal rage, that mom rage is something that you experience also, because that is how we break the stigma, right? Is by sharing that, yes, this is something that I'm familiar with and that I have gone through too. And it's nothing to be ashamed about, right? There's no reason to have guilt and shame over this, right? This is a real phenomenon and it is super common. That doesn't mean it's okay, but it really is something that is experienced so often by so many moms. So the way I came to this topic is, like I mentioned previously, my private practice is now 5 years old. I have two kids of my own. My kids are now 8 and 12. Um, we made it through the pandemic somehow, including, computer schooling and shifting to everybody working from home and all of that, absolute chaos. And, what I noticed, especially during kind of the height of the pandemic, was my clients coming in with this very specific rage that was intimately tied to their experience of motherhood. And that's the definition of mom rage. It is rage that specifically exists in the context of motherhood. And I was, I'm on social media too. And I was seeing that there was talk about this on social media, and I was, hearing my colleagues talk about it. I was hearing my clients talk about it. And as somebody who was, experiencing the pandemic also, I was noticing it coming up for me too. I was noticing that my fuse was shorter and I couldn't figure out why. And so I started to really kind of dive into the topic and look into the topic, really looking for resources for my clients and also for myself, but really looking at what can we do to help with this issue? What can we do to manage maternal rage? And that was how I really came to the topic. And I started looking for existing academic research on it, looking for books on it, looking for stuff on social media. I was desperate, looking for anything that I could possibly find on this topic. And so I have been looking at this topic and helping clients with it for years now. And then this past summer, I had the opportunity to present on it at a conference for both maternal mental health providers and, kind of anyone in the field that's interested can attend the Postpartum Support International Conference. And so, yeah, I presented on it this summer, and the room, so it was the sold out conference with 1,200 people, and the room that I was in to present filled up so quickly that we literally had to lock the doors and turn people away. We had people sitting on the floor. We had people all the way into the back of the room. And when I tell you the energy in that room was electric, like the attendees in that room were ready to talk about mom rage. They were like, the room was literally bursting at the seams, and you could feel everybody just so ready to talk about it. And so I think that's where we are at this point with mom rage. We are ready to talk about it. We're ready to do something about it. We're ready to get help with it. And I feel really fortunate to kind of be at that intersection.
Yeah, and I think it's huge. And I'm gonna kind of say, can you decode mom rage a little bit more? Like, what is it like? Because I could think like, okay, my kid doesn't put away his shoes, and it's the 900th time I've asked, or I've tripped over them, and it's like, oh, are you kidding me? Like, how does a mom experience that maternal mom rage? Like, what, just give it a look, a definition just for anyone out there who's like, well, does that mean, like I said, trip over your kid's shoe and you yell at them? Or, I always say sometimes I have to motivationally speak for my children to get them to move or take action. It may not be yelling like I'm angry, so just decoding it a little bit more.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So there's typically stages to mom rage. So what we typically see with mom rage is there's a buildup, there's a release, and then there's the aftermath, right? So that's kind of typically what we see. So the buildup could be your kid's not listening to you. Like that is frequently leads to the buildup of mom rage, right? And then you feel the tightness in your chest and your shoulders, right? And you feel like you're about to explode. And then you've asked them 100 times to please get their shoes on so that you can leave the house on time to get them to whatever activities that you need to get to, right? Or to get to work on time or wherever else you're needing to go. and nobody's listening. And then you explode, right? And then so that tightness in the chest and that tightness in the shoulders and that the feeling of heat in your face, right? It just all comes out, right? And for some of us, it comes out whether screaming, for some of us, shouting, stomping around, slamming doors, right? Whatever the case might be, right? There is this explosion of the rage, right? And then there's the aftermath where it's like, oh no, what have I done? Right? What have I done? And so that is what we typically see in terms of mom rage. So we typically see, again, this buildup, this release, and then the aftermath. So that is usually how it presents.
Are you curious about KatFit Strength? Well, KatFit Strength is designed to help you achieve your fitness goals with confidence and clarity. Whether you're a busy mom juggling multiple responsibilities, a woman navigating unique challenges of prenatal, postpartum, or perimenopause, or an athlete looking to enhance your performance, KatFit Strength has you covered. Let's get down to it. KatFit Strength offers personalized programs tailored to your unique needs, goals, and ensuring you get the most out of every workout. Expert guidance provided for you with the understanding of the importance of balancing strength training, cardio, and mobility. Flexible workouts designed to fit into your busy schedule, whether you're at home or at the gym or on the go. So why choose KatFit Strength? I believe in creating sustainable fitness habits that adapt to your lifestyle. I focus on helping you lift effectively, move better, and feel stronger every day. Plus, emphasis is on realistic goal setting, celebrating every win, and helping you stay motivated and inspired. Okay, yeah, I've definitely felt that. I feel like if you're listening to this and you're a mom, you have felt that, and it is like I said, I mean, motherhood is tough, and I remember especially going back to that 2020 time period. My older son, who again, shockingly, how old is he? 13, said to me, he's like, Mom, why are you yelling at us all the time? And I literally was like, I don't know why I'm yelling. And, that's when I still yell, fewer and far between. But it is one of those where it's like, I just remember that it was just such a extremely highly pressurized time and confusing aspect. And yeah, he just was like, you're yelling. And I'm like, I couldn't control it. And it was tough. And it really gave me this, like, I don't want to say wake up call, but more introspection to tune into more of, I don't want to say just my unmet needs, but to your point with those physical feelings. And I know for myself that it kind of led to conversations with my kids. My older son is very into volcanoes and meteorology and all that. Like, he wants to be that. So I described to him, I said, well, when a volcano is like dormant and the lava's bubbling under the surface, but then the pressures, the geothermal pressures start to shift and change, and it just can't, and it explodes. I said, we all with our emotions are like that. And then when the pressure builds and it has to get released. And I said, I'm not saying it's okay to yell, but it becomes frustrating. And he's like, oh, and it doesn't explain all of my, that the maternal rage, but like, for me, it was a way that I'm glad he called me on it, because I didn't really realize how much I was yelling because I was a little unsettled. And then it was like, okay, let's connect. Let's decode this. Like, when I ask you to do something, it's not because I'm just like want to fill the void. There's a reason and an intention, and I need to see that action follow through from your end. Or if you're confused, you need to have a conversation with me and use your words. But anyway, that's like a little bit in my household how we kind of came to some sort of middle ground. So,
Yeah. And so what's really interesting, one of the things that you mentioned was unmet needs.
mhm.
So what we find in the academic research on maternal rage, which there Not surprisingly, so you work in women's health, so that there is a huge void in terms of really good research on women's health and in women's healthcare. But there are a handful of really good studies on maternal rage, and they are very recent, and they're really well done. And in those studies, the researchers saw patterns, right? And that's kind of an important thing when you're doing research in healthcare. And the patterns that they noticed in terms of mom rage was that there were two kind of broad categories that they found led to the mom rage explosion, if you will, right? And those two things were unmet needs, right? Like big surprise. And the other one was violated expectations. And I loved the language that they use with it, because that's like such a strong term, right? Like
Yeah.
violated expectations. So I'll start with unmet needs. So unmet needs is right. It says it all there. It's self-explanatory, right? So unmet needs could be anything from being sleep deprived, right? Not getting enough sleep, not being seen or heard, right? That is a need that we all have as humans. And especially when you are a parent and you're trying to get something done, not being seen or heard is an unmet need, right? Not being appreciated, feeling like you're being taken for granted. That is also an unmet need. Most of us need to feel some sort of appreciation for the things that we do, right? And so all of those things are unmet needs. So that can absolutely lead to the buildup of mom rage. And then the other category is this idea of violated expectations. The interesting thing with violated expectations is that expectations can be violated externally, so by people, things, and the environment outside of us, but also by us, by ourselves. They can be violated internally, right? So an example of violated expectations, externally, there could be the expectation like, okay, I'm having my first child, and I'm partnered, and my partner and I, we're gonna split all of the work that it takes to take care of a baby. We're splitting it right down the middle, right? And it's going to be completely equal. It's going to work out really well, right? We're going to split the nighttime wake ups and the diapers and all of that stuff, right? And then the baby shows up and your partner doesn't hear them crying. So there was air quotes around that for anybody
Yes.
that's only listening to us and not watching this. Doesn't hear them crying, it doesn't wake up, right? Doesn't get the bottles ready in the proper way, right? Doesn't participate in the way that they said they were going to participate, right? And your expectation was that this labor was going to be split and was going to be broken up evenly, and then that doesn't happen. So that is an expectation that is violated externally. An example of an expectation that is violated internally could be something along the lines of, I am going to be the calmest mom that ever existed, right? I'm going to be calm, I'm going to be cool, I'm going to be collected, and I'm going to exist in that frame of mind all the time, right? That is really an expectation, because I feel like there's so many ridiculous expectations that are put on moms that we then internalize, right? So it's like, oh yeah, my toddler is going to be throwing things and not wanting to go to bed. I'm going to handle that so calmly, right? Like, I got it. And then it happens and you don't handle it calmly because it's frustrating, right? And then you have violated your own expectation. And that's where the guilt and shame come in frequently, where it's like, I was going into this thinking that I was going to behave in this particular way, and this is what this experience was going to look like for me. And it doesn't, right? That's a
Yeah.
violated and I have violated my own expectation, and that hurts, right? And so I thought that that was really such a fascinating and important facet of the academic research, was this idea of unmet needs and violated expectations.
And I love that. I love like, I don't like love it, but I love that articulation of like, it's because I personally feel one of the things that I almost feel like it's passive aggressive on social media like this, that it's always painted that moms just need more self-care. And and it is a real and valid thing that there are unmet needs. But oftentimes the idea of self-care is go meditate or go construct this complex morning routine. Or if you don't have 30 minutes extra in your day for your self-care, you're never going to heal. And we're Not that we're only good enough for primal needs to be met. Often it's those you're not slept, seen and heard and validated are huge, huge in that term to not make us all just this like, oh, tranquil being, but it gives, and that appreciation gives back so much more than being like, go meditate or, go like, go get your nails or whatever, like a beautification process for that self-care. It's no, you need to be complete and whole as a person. And I feel when we make that transition, I'm going to speak more for myself and not for others, is when I made that transition, I didn't realize how much of those needs were a core part of my being. How, even though I'm going to say like, even though I knew I was low on sleep, how much that impacted my own mental health or, being disregarded by others, not intentionally. Oftentimes, we sometimes don't know what we're saying or what others are saying to us, and how it conflicted with my own internal expectation of how I would be a mom. Like, I'll give an example. So with my older son, it just did not work out for breastfeeding. It's all good. He fed, he's thriving, he's a very healthy child, whatever works, it works, And so for me, I had envisioned this whole like, this is how it's going to go. And when I realized this was not a healthy relationship for my son and I was like, I need to change this. For me, I was dealing with a lot of guilt and shame behind that I couldn't, like, I felt lesser than as a mom because this is part of my quote unquote roles to supply and feed my child, supply food for my child and feed my child. And then it was met with not ill-intended, but like my husband, who is an extremely supportive partner, was like, well, you said you were going to do this. Well, why don't you try harder? He wasn't intentionally guilting me. He was just like, look, I know you can do this. Like, let's do this. And it was just one of those where, we talked it all out. This is not a repressed thing, but it was like, you know, that heaped it on more. And I remember it just being this like, oh my goodness, I let everyone and everything down, and like this big guilt, which did attribute to that friction that came between he and I until we really talked it out. And, we're happy. My child's thriving, but it is one of those where you can see, but I didn't realize how so many of these things like came up until I became a mom, how they're quintessential to the part of being until that transition into motherhood. Or yeah, I just think that is something too with that. I was kind of joke, maybe it's not a good joke, but back when I was becoming a mom, the book What to Expect When Expecting was like what you read. You was like, that is the be all book that had all the information, but I'm like, it didn't. It was great that I learned more in depth what the baby or the pregnancy was going to be, the developmental milestones and things to look for. But what I really needed was not how I manage myself, but what are the change and transitions going to happen? What does this really look like? Or maybe not really look like, but like maternal rage is going to happen. But here's some things to look at. Here's some things to question. Or, hey, you know what? There's going to be a time between you and your partner where you may not be on the same page. Here are ways that you both can have conversations. Or, you don't know an explanation to anyone about how you're feeding your child. Like, it's not their business. Like, even if they are a doting, grandparent, it's none of their business. like how do you, like, I think having those is not to be on the defense, but to actually rid some of that guilt and shame with those unmet needs that do, like, as the research shows, turn into rage. Like, yeah. Sorry.
Yep. No, that is exactly right. And that is a perfect example of how, external pressures, but then also things that, we have internalized, right? I feel like in talking about So how we feed our babies is a big one, right? And not only is there a lot of pressure which is right, because it's swung so dramatically right now. There's a lot of pressure to breastfeed and to breastfeed exclusively, all around like the breast is best idea and all of that, instead of fed is best, which is actually true. The babies just need to be fed however you can feed them, right? So there's all of those external expectations that we then internalize. And then also there's all, I know the only images that I saw of breastfeeding moms were like, and I'm laughing because I'm picturing this is like, you're going to know what I'm talking about as soon as I say it, is like out in a meadow in like gauzy, like gorgeous outfits with like hair all done and like full makeup, and the baby like latched perfectly and peacefully, right? Where actual breastfeeding does not look like that. So that is the expectation, right? That we internalize, right? Like, okay, I want to breastfeed, right? And this is what it's going to look like. It's going to be so peaceful and so calming and so beautiful, which it can be at times, but not all. And honestly, not most of the time. It's usually pretty messy. It can be really painful, especially in the beginning, right? It takes a ton of time when we actually look at the time that it takes to. So I cringe whenever I hear like breastfeeding is free. It's not free. The amount of time that it takes for someone to breastfeed a baby in the first year of life is equivalent to a full-time job. It's like thousands and thousands of hours, right? At most of which are in the middle of the night. So again, this idea that there's the external expectations, right, that can get violated, and then these internal expectations that we can also violate, that then lead to these explosions, and then we feel terrible afterwards, right? So it's a vicious cycle. And what has been so eye-opening for my clients, and what's also a relief for my clients, is knowing that their individual experience is actually reflected in the aggregate, right? Like we actually see their individual experiences reflected in academic research. And for most of my clients, that is such a relief. Like, oh, it's not just me. And it's like, no, it's not just you. It's so many women, right? We now have entire books about this. And this is now an entire area of research in maternal mental health, right? And so that is really, really important. And it really provides just like such a breather for so many of the moms that I work with.
I think that piece, when I know I see it in my clients' eyes, when they are like, wait, it's not just me. You can feel parts of them just like exhale. It's like, no. And I don't know if it's always been this way, but I kind of blame social media sometimes for these glossed over pictures. I mean, it is very cherry picked pictures. Whatever you want to put up, you can construct this fake identity or fake reality, because that's essentially what sometimes it is. There are authentic, really, I try to pride myself in being an account, especially in the field of fitness, like of really towing the line of being like, I'm going to try and be as realistic as possible here. And, that it doesn't help the situation in these circumstances. The shoulds to the reality. I should be able to, or it should look like this, and it really can distort and mess with your psyche. Even if you are someone who's grounded, I always tell my clients, like, I'll catch myself in a trap. I'm like, oh, I'm just chilling here, like everything's cool. Let me pop on social media and I'll start scrolling, and then all of a sudden I'm like, wait, is that really something that's gonna? And I'm like, oh my goodness, the science, that is just a quick hack. That is nothing. That is not going to help you. Like how quickly you can get sucked in, and it's like engineered to be that way. But yeah, like I don't know if you've seen clients where, don't talk about your clients, like, but like if you've seen that trend with like, what is on social media, like there's that big, oh yes, a friend had sent it to me. I can't even remember, but like this big like mom push of, oh, I'm gonna butcher it. But anyway, like there's this big trending of like mom, like a mom culture of, oh, it just literally flew out of my brain. But yeah, I don't know what's trending out there. I was like, I saw it and I was like, I'm never gonna do it. I'm just gonna pass it off. But yeah, it was, yeah, it just the impact of social media I do see, especially like in the fitness industry with clients coming in, and I'm sure you see that with your own clientele, like how heavy it can impact. So
Yeah, so it's so funny that you mentioned that because I'm reading a book right now called Momfluenced that is all about the like mom culture on social media. So I think just or the mom influencer culture on social media. So I think just like anything else, social media can be good and bad, right? One of the reasons that social media is so attractive is it helps us to feel connected, right? In terms of the good, especially in the maternal mental health field, it definitely has reduced the stigma around some specific aspects of maternal mental health. Around, we talk about postpartum depression more, we talk about postpartum anxiety more, we talk about postpartum OCD more, which most people didn't even know was its own thing, right? And now you'll see that on social media. And of course, what we're talking about today, you'll see maternal rage talked about quite a bit on social media. So in some ways, right, this bringing these different topics to light, right, helping moms feel like they're not alone. And that way, social media is a good thing. And then in all the ways you just described, it can be a really, really negative thing, right? We do the compare and despair thing, right? Where there's these, very curated accounts that put forth this really specific idea of motherhood. So I wonder, were you referring, there's like the trad wife thing.
yes,
There
yeah,
is
yeah,
one of my favorites is the sad beige aesthetic, right? Where it's
yeah.
just like everything is beige and very minimal, but also very clean, which I could appreciate, right? And like so there is, aspects of these different pieces of influencer culture that are really attractive, right? That make motherhood, which especially in this country can be very chaotic. We don't have a whole lot of systemic support, where, most of the moms that I know are extremely busy and overwhelmed. And you look at these, what's currently trending in the mom influencer world, and it just feels calm and gentle and peaceful, right? And then that sets its expectation of, well, this mom can do this. Why can't I do it? And it's like, no, because that was video, somebody took that video and it was 2 minutes out of their entire day and it's fully curated and they've got a whole team that works with them to push out this content and you're just trying to survive. It's different, right? But it doesn't feel different. It feels like, well, why can't I do this? Why doesn't my life look like this, right? Why does my beige outfit have spit up all over it, right? Instead of being pristine. So that is what that's the conversation that I have with my clients when we talk about social media, right? Because I think when we look at things in completely like absolute terms, right? In very black and white terms, like social media is bad, right? And it's like, and you have to abstain from it. And it's like, well, for most people, that's not realistic, right? And honestly, it's not all bad, right? So I know one of the things that I love to do when I'm on social media is like something gets on my nerves and I unfollow it, or something makes me feel, an account makes me feel uncomfortable, or I start doing the compare and despair. And I'm like, I don't need to look at this
Yeah.
anymore. Like, I don't need access to this, right? I'm just going to click unfollow or unlike. And then it's like, oh, a breath of fresh air, right? Like we have agency with social media. And I think we forget that sometimes because, like you said, it's designed to pull us in. So you really have to be mindful about the content that you're consuming and how you're consuming it and how it's impacting you. But there can be some good aspects to it. We just have to be really, really mindful of the negative aspects and how that is impacting us. So like anything else, it's nuanced and complicated and sometimes fairly ridiculous when it comes to social media. So we just have to be aware.
Yeah. And that, yeah, and the awareness factor is huge. I always ask myself, like, especially if I know I'm feeling just having an off day, it's just nothing, anything has to happen. It just, like emotions are like weather patterns, they can just shift and change. And so I'm always like, am I in a good state of mind to just open up? Because who knows what's going to be spit out at me. And so, and sometimes if it's not, I just put the phone down. And it can be really hard because but I do love that, like, I don't want to see this, like, or yeah, it's things that pop up on your feed. I'm like, can it just be all funny animal videos? Because those are my favorite. Like,
It can be if that's what you, if that's how you curate your feed, right? If that's what you.
trying to get there, all funny animal videos. So right now, today, it's dancing chickens are trending on my feed. So I mean, and it's cracking me up to
See,
like,
that sounds good.
like,
To me, that sounds really, really great.
yeah, it's been like, I'm like, I don't know what is in the algorithms to present this, but I'm loving it. I'm like, keep it coming. So,
Right.
um, but yeah, and I think that is, I always remind my clients is that even if it's my social media, for whatever reason, if I like, it could be a very good, positive, non-nuanced post. But if it's going to hurt, if it's not going to impact you in a good way, like snooze my account. Like I care about you. I'd rather you do that than read a post, because it's not that I'm not true to who or what I post on social media, and I'm not tricking anyone, but it's a one by one square, whatever it is. And you have a certain amount of time, and I try to be as clear as possible, which maybe my word choice doesn't hit you the way I want it to come across. And so yeah, don't look at my stuff. Like, I fully support that, because it's like the way I work with my clients isn't different from social media, but there's more depth to it. Where a post it's like a text message. You can read it with different inflection. And it may, there's no emotion or the human connection is limited there. So yeah, I'm all for it. And it's like, I think I don't take offense if a client chooses not to follow me or snoozes my stuff. Cool, that's fine. It is, you got to do what is good for you and your mental health, and getting you not just through the day, but thriving through the day and feeling great on the other end of it. So,
Right. I teach clients this technique that I call making for now decisions, because I think especially in parenthood and especially in motherhood, we are inundated with the need to make decisions, right? And there's a term for that. It's called decision fatigue, right? We just make so many decisions all of the time, all day long, that it gets to be absolutely exhausting. So I teach clients to make for now decisions. So if there is an account on social media that is particularly bothersome to you right now, you can snooze it for 30 days, right? Or take a break for a little bit, or unlike it for a while, or unfollow for a while. And then it's probably still going to be there when you when you go back, right? And if you've decided that you're open to that content again, then you can refollow it or like it again, or whatever the case might be, right? So for now, decisions take the pressure off of, oh, I'm cutting this thing off forever. And, the same thing with my clients who decide to take social media breaks. You could take a social media break for 10 minutes, an hour, a day, a month. I have clients that have decided to take much longer breaks from social media, and that has been, worked out for them. But they still look at it as a for now decision, like, oh, I could go back at any time if I'm interested or if that appeals to me. So there isn't this pressure that, like, oh, this is so the opposite of a for now decision would be a forever decision, right? This isn't a forever decision, right? This is just like, I'm looking at my situation right now. I'm looking at how I feel right now, and this is the best decision that I can make in the moment. And then when I'm ready to reassess, I will, right? And that's also something that can really help with mom rage, right? This idea that because we feel this decision fatigue, right? So that can add to, the buildup and the explosion. So allowing yourself to kind of break things down into smaller chunks so that you don't feel all this pressure heaped on you all of the time can be really helpful. So that's something that I teach clients in terms of working with mom rage too, because mom rage the feelings are valid, right? It's frequently referred to in the research as righteous rage, right? It doesn't come out of nowhere. It makes sense in the context in which we experience it. And so then we have to work with it. You can't work against it. You can't ignore it, right? The feelings are valid. So then how do we work with those feelings? And one of the ways is trying to take off some of this pressure that we feel in motherhood, right? And, taking breaks from social media in whatever way that might work for you can be one of those things, right? Another way is getting more support, right? And so there's a number of ways that we can work with the maternal rage to kind of reduce the instances of it. So while still acknowledging that like some of these things are systemic, like we don't have really good systems for moms in this country, everything from childcare to healthcare, to maternal leave, right, to family leave. Those systems just don't exist. And so allowing yourself the time and the space to build support systems can be really, really important. And again, it's about relieving a lot of that pressure, kind of however that looks for you.
And that's, I mean, it's huge. And I think, I'm glad you tied in the decision fatigue with it, because I do talk a lot about with my clients the decision fatigue and how from the moment they wake up, and sometimes our subconscious, before we wake up, before that predictable alarm clock goes off, starts to tick off the decisions, and it's your go, go, go. And for me, from the standpoint of getting their fitness in or planning meals, it's, hey, those are a lot of decisions to get there. And to your point with systems and support, it's what can we do to put in to give back? Even if it's sometimes, and I'm, like you said, our country is not set up for supports and systems, for us at all. But it's like, what can we build that is sustainable for you now? And it doesn't mean that you're not worthy or capable of achieving your ultimate goal. We need to build this now for the person you are now to elevate you for your future self. And it's like, it can be hard. I tell them, like, we want simple, and simple doesn't mean easy. Simple can still be hard, and we adapt and change with it. And I just would be redundant, but it is a hard concept to grasp. And once they understand, and like you said, it's that release of pressure, they realize that in the context of fitness, they're focused on only getting or where they should be and comparing themselves to where they want to go. Once they start seeing where they're at, they can then better support themselves. And obviously I'm there supporting them, or we put together like systems and structures that are within their means and energy capacity to help set them up for success, which can be really hard. I remember trying to, like, until I started decoding my own, and really, I still don't have all my pressure off me. I don't know if we ever get there, but until I started that concept of meeting myself where I was and not projecting or shoulding with that guilt and shame, it became a little bit more like, okay, I can breathe a little. I could feel everything just relax just slightly. And now I've started and saying to my kids when they come at me with a barrage of questions, which is great, I just say, one moment, mom doesn't have the capacity for that. I want to hear what you have to say. It's important to me. Can you give me just 2 minutes to get myself focused so I can take that on? And I created that on my own. I mean, I'm sure you can put back into that, but like that has helped me not get overwhelmed and then just wind up getting angsty back at my kids. Like, oh my goodness, like I'm gonna blow my top because you're throwing so much at me, and I'm in the process of cooking dinner and I'm thinking we have to get out the door here and you need to get this and you haven't gotten this done and now you're asking for this, this, and this, and this. Oh my goodness. Like, and it's just, it seems like a lot of verbiage to be like, mom doesn't have the capacity, but I'm like, hold just a moment. Let me allow myself to finish here so I can receive more, or we'll table it, and it is, I think the biggest thing is like having that grace of nobody does it all. And
Mhm.
it's okay to take time, and it is more than okay to ask for help. And there is support out there. And, like for yourself, helping clients think through that and decode and see those triggers so that not that they can just help themselves, but it's normalizing that they're seen, they're heard, they're validated, and owning their experiences. So they're coming from enough versus that scarcity and always feeling like they're not doing enough and playing catch up, and that pressure just mounds with then the guilt and the shame with it. So
Yeah, no, absolutely, right? So if we are talking about unmet needs and violated expectations, right, that are leading to maternal rage. So I hear the example that you gave, and I hear like your boundaries being violated, right? So that's where overwhelm comes from, right? It's like something I frequently talk to clients about is how when we become parents, and especially when we become mothers, the ability to hear ourselves think is like stripped away from us, right? And in particular, I am somebody who needs to hear themselves think. That is a need that I have. And so when that need is stripped away from me, in an example like you are talking about, where I'm trying to get dinner on the table so that we can get out the door to get to soccer practice on time, but we're also trying to get homework done. But I'm also getting communication from colleagues and clients, and I feel like it's something that I have to reply to right away. So I'm literally being pulled in all these directions. All of my boundaries are just completely falling away. I can't hear myself think. I'm not sure what to do next, right? That's all happening at once. That then becomes an unmet need because it's like, I can't even hear myself think. So then what do I need in that moment? What can help me with that? And you gave a really great example of like saying to your kids, I just need a minute, right? I just need a moment so that I can get myself together. I don't have the capacity right now. Give me a minute and I'll be right back. Right. So whether that be, you take an emotional break, a physical break, right? I encourage clients to do that all the time, right? Just remove yourself physically from the situation if you can, right? And then you meet that need, right? You step away for a minute, you get back the ability to hear yourself think, and then you re-enter the chaos, right? With a plan for what to do next. So I love that example. I think that's a super realistic example. And it's something that I talk to clients about all of the time. And it's also important to recognize your own needs, right? Everybody has different needs, and we also have different thresholds for things that we can manage, right? In terms of multitasking, in terms of all the things that get thrown at us, in terms of the decisions that we have to make every day, right? And there's nothing wrong with your particular threshold, right? So I teach clients that too, where it's like, oh, well, this mom seems like she can handle this much. And I'm like, well, maybe in that area, but maybe not in this area. And also, maybe that's just what's being, kind of portrayed to you, but you don't actually know what's it. I always tell clients, I'm like, all moms are struggling. And I'm like, I know this because of the work that I do and the exposure that I get to it. And I can tell you that all moms have, and I don't frequently talk in absolutes, but I can absolutely say that all moms have at least one thing that they are struggling with at any given time. So give yourself that and know that you are not alone in that. And then, yes, give yourself the grace and space to work through it.
yeah, and I love that. I love that. And I love that word threshold. Like that is, I know, and I'll just use myself as an example, is I'll tell my kids too. I mean, because I can feel my threshold shifting. And sometimes it can be directly correlated to the quality of sleep I've had the night before.
Mm-hmm.
And, there are times, and I've worked hard at this because again, wanting to be like, I have to have the clean house. I have to like, nobody's telling me my house needs to be clean, but it's like after dinner, all the dishes should be clean before we all go to bed, all that. And it's like, I've gotten really somewhat good, not perfect, at understanding that threshold of like, you know what? I'm tired. This doesn't matter. Like, there's going to be a sink full of dishes, and both my husband and I work together on things. I'm like, leave the dishes unless you really feel compelled to do it, but I have no threshold here to do this. This is not happening. I'm at capacity. We're done. Like, and or sometimes it's my threshold is low, but I need to push myself a little bit more, not over it, because I know tomorrow is a bigger day and that I do have a little bit as a reserve here to push because on the back end, maybe my kids are already asleep because I have a moment to get back to myself. Because I've been in those moments where I've pushed and pushed and pushed and really dug myself into that hole and been ragey. Like, and it's not fair to yourself or others around you, but sometimes in the context of life, it does happen. And it is, yeah, and everybody's out there struggling. It just, that
Oh
is,
yeah.
that's the one thing I always tell it, and I'm going to speak from the lens of strength and conditioning and nutrition and all this. I said, and then going back to social media, don't let certain gurus think that they have it all figured out.
Yep.
Like, I don't eat clean 24/7. I don't have perfect training plans. Nobody does.
Mhm.
And, you know, there are times that it's perfectly okay if you go through months of having great consistency and it's quote unquote easy to get to the gym, that then you hit a month of, I don't know if I really want this anymore. That is normal. That is normal. And it's okay. And here's how we adapt and go through it, because you are a living, breathing being that has emotions and feelings, and it's okay to reassess. It's okay to like doubt certain aspects that you were really striving for and change and adapt. And that's okay. It's not 100% all the time because that's not sustainable.
Right. No, it's not sustainable and it's not realistic. So, something else I teach clients that I think makes a lot of sense in the context that you were just talking about is I teach clients to ask themselves, what do I need to feel cared for right now? Because I think that is such an important question of when do I push myself, right? When do I really need to push through? And when do I need to pull back? And I think it can be really difficult to discern when, as mothers, we always have a million things on our list, right? There's always something else on my list. Oh, and honestly, I usually have multiple lists going at the same time. I have my work list. I have my personal list, right? I have my goals for my practice, right? I have things I want to do with my kids, right? So at any given time, I can always be moving on to the next thing, right? And so I teach my clients to ask themselves, what do you need to feel cared for right now? In order to feel cared for right now, do you need to push through and get that sink full of dishes done, right? Do you need to do a little bit more work? Do you need to get a workout in, right? What do you need to feel cared for right now? Or conversely, do you need some rest? Does rest need to be prioritized right now? Can you get a nap in? Do you need a longer night's sleep, right? What do you need? Do you need connection, right? Do you need to connect with friends and family in your community, right? What do you need to feel cared for right now? And I love that question as like a discernment technique when we are struggling with that idea of pushing forward or pulling back a little bit, right? And then that, also relates to our conversation on maternal rage too. That's a technique there too. Whereas when you're feeling that rage, you're not feeling cared for. So then what do you need to feel cared for? And like you said, what is actually realistic, right? Like we could think of all of the, like an all inclusive, expense paid vacation
Sounds
would be
good.
very helpful for me at any given time, right? But that's not always in the cards, right? And so, but maybe a 5-minute walk around the block would be the most helpful for me. And I have access to that in the moment, right? And so then that's what I do, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. To your point, it just kind of jogged a memory. I was the moment of overwhelm, and my husband's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, I basically said, "I'm like, I need a week of an all expenses paid vacation to a spa, but I can't have access to that, so I'm just gonna go outside on the patio and just feel the sun on my face because right now I need a moment." And he's like,
Perfect.
"Okay."
Perfect.
I was like, but it is true. It when like, and I love that question, and you know, incorporating that in isn't an overnight process. There's going to be that, you're in the moment and you may forget to ask. But I think in that like after part is like, okay, okay, what like and reassess of like not what could have been done better. It's not better, it's what led to that. And, you know, I think approaching, and a little bit from how I work with my clients, is approach with curiosity. Don't
Mhm.
approach with that shame and guilt. If you approach with curiosity, because maybe not in the same context, things will come up again, but like life will get busy again, and it could cause, by just nature, not getting to the gym or workouts. So the goal isn't to be perfect. The goal is to adapt so your needs are met. And if we can stay curious, and maybe, I'm going to speak from the lens on like how I coach my clients, is maybe we don't schedule workouts that week. Maybe we're focused on getting the sleep, getting nutrition in, and because whatever that week is filled with, and we don't layer that on. You're not going to lose fitness. You're not focused on your goals. We need to schedule that in because you're going to come back because it's planned. And the one thing that I know is the mind and us as humans crave structure, and the
Mhm.
mind craves comfort. And so if that comfort is there's no workout scheduled, and the next workout is when that madness week ends, and you're back on the regular routine, then it just flows. So that's where it's like looking at, when you go through that, approach with curiosity versus like, oh, I should have been able to. Because no, maybe that was your best in that situation. And then maybe we can kind of adapt from it and go. So it is tricky, but I do like that question of like, help assess when to push or pull back, because it is a very fine line and it's different for each person.
Yep,
And
and it's different at each moment. So
exactly.
that question can kind of move with you, which I like.
Exactly. And I love that. I love that. Maternal rage is such a huge topic, and it is one that it's trending. It needs to be talked about more. And I'm gonna have to dive into some of that research because I love research.
I'll
um,
send it to you. I'll send you my resources,
oh,
Kat.
that'll be great. I'll be nerding out on it. I'll be like, everybody, maternal rage, just go and see Nicole. Because it is, and I love that it's becoming more common to talk about this, that it is being destigmatized, because it is a way that is going to break down that perfection, that idea that everybody has it all figured out. Like my kid said to me the other day, he's like, gosh, he's like, adults have it all figured out. I just don't know. And I was like, oh my goodness, please, no. I was like, I don't even have it figured out every day. I'm like, I don't think anyone does. I was like, if someone tells you they have it completely figured out, question what they figured out. Not in a rude way, just ask questions. Because I was like, you don't. Like, it's hard. Life is hard, and that's okay. And hard doesn't mean miserable. Hard means you're growing, you're challenging yourself, and that's part of life. But we could go on for hours about this, and I will have to have you back. Where can people find you if they want to follow you for information, find you or come see you, etc.?
Absolutely. So this is kind of funny because we talked about social media in this conversation, but like we said, it's good and bad. If you wanted to find me on social media, you can find me on Instagram at Therapist Mom Collective. You can find me on Facebook at Nicole McNellis Therapy, and the website for my practice is NicoleMcNellis.com. And anyone can feel free to reach out at any time for information on my practice and working with me. And also I'm always happy to share resources, especially on mom rage. So people can feel free to reach out at any time. I'm always happy to connect.
Awesome. Awesome. And all that will be in the show notes. So if you're driving, if you're out walking, don't feel bad that you missed it. You weren't in front of a desktop or on your phone. It will be there so you can find her there. And this is great. We will definitely have you back. And I'm sure more on this topic and more with this, all as it pertains to womanhood and motherhood. So thank you. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much. This was so great.
Thank you for joining me on another episode of Miles from Her View. Your support means the world to me, and I truly appreciate you being a part of our community. If you found today's episode helpful and want to stay informed about all things KatFit strength, make sure to subscribe to our weekly newsletter. You'll receive exclusive insights, tips, and updates straight to your inbox. To sign up, simply visit the show notes for the subscription link. To discover more about KatFit strength programs and how you can ignite your fitness journey, head over to our website at www.kat.fit. There you'll find everything you need to invigorate your path to strength and resilience. Once again, thank you for tuning in, and I can't wait to connect with you in our upcoming episodes. Take care, and remember, act to take the next step.